Thank you.
Right.
Are you suggesting that someone's trying to make a real-life sequel?
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
Two in the box!
Ready to go.
We be fast and
They be slow.
Wow. A second Super Saiyan? Second in order, perhaps, but by no means in stature. Your fight is with me now.
I'll have my revenge, and Deathstalker too.
Man, I can't fucking believe this. Another basement, another elevator. How can the same shit happen to the same guy twice?
Oh, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films.
Well, hi, everyone, and how's it going? If you're tuning in now, you know this is Inside the Sequel. And of course, I am your host always. My name is Chris Hurtado, and this is Inside the Sequel. You know, we talk about sequel movies that kind of get forgotten, maybe you haven't seen before, and we defend the hell out of them for why you need to watch them. If you're here for the first time, welcome, and I hope you enjoy this episode. If you're returning again, you probably came back listening to our last episode where we talk about Scream 2 with no acclaim. That was a great episode. But today, we're in the meat of the month, and we have my most anticipated episode, if I'm being honest. We are talking about the 1985 sequel to the 1939, I believe I have the year right, for The Wizard of Oz. We have The Return to Oz from 1985.
This summer, Walt Disney Pictures presents a motion picture fantasy adventure beyond your fondest imagination. You'll be transported miraculously back to the enchanted land of Oz, that magical kingdom beloved by young and old for generations.
It's just a yellow brick.
No, Belina, you don't understand. This was the Yellow Brick Road.
You'll share with Dorothy Gale the shock of finding everything mysteriously changed.
What's happened to everybody?
And you'll delight with her discovery of 4 wonderful new friends who band together against a wicked queen and the dreaded Gnome King. This is the Oz you haven't seen before, and this is the Oz you'll want to visit again and again. From Walt Disney Pictures comes a whole new world of entertainment.
Why don't we just fly back to Kansas?
Return to Oz.
And for today's episode, we have a special guest, returning guest, one of my favorite guests to have on here. And I think just hashtag Film Twitter's favorite guest on podcast, because she doesn't have her own for whatever. I'd love to see what her podcast would ever be on, but I have the lovely Carmelita Valdez back on here. How are you, Carmelita?
Hi, Chris. I am so stoked to be here talking movies with you again. I love Inside the Sequel. You know this. And I am especially excited for the movie we're talking about, Return to Oz.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this one because most times I feel like I have an idea of what movies I want to do with you. And in this one, you were like, Chris, like, I kind of want to do this one. And I was like, I've been wanting to watch this one for a long time. It just feels right. You're also one of like 4 other people on Twitter who actually like this podcast. I'll name them off. I think Doug McCambridge loves this podcast, but I think it's like he likes to get drunk and listen to it. So I don't know if he actually does. And then the third person is going to be Mitch Oliver, because like I feel like he gets off on hearing me hate myself. I think he actually likes hearing that. I don't know. It's a weird kink for him. I think the fourth person who genuinely loves this podcast, besides Lindsay, because she loves everything, but I think it's Daniel Epler from Cobwebs, because we went to college together. So I think in his mind, he's thinking, look how down in the dumps my old college buddy has gotten. This is certified gold comedy. And I think
I'm not buying any of this. I'm not buying any of this. Inside the Sequel is a great podcast. You are a great podcast host. This is like your, I'm stepping in here as your tia, as your auntie.
Here we go.
To tell you to believe in yourself. It's a great podcast. And I bet there's a ton of faithful listeners, and maybe they're just shy.
I
And
really,
that's why they don't hit you up on Twitter, but they're there.
I really hope they're like the film students who are afraid to, to talk in class. You hear
Right.
you always hear on film Twitter, and I was on that Terror Table episode where they just bombarded me with A24 film Twitter conversation the whole time. I was verbally abused the whole time. I was shaking. And I have a feeling my listeners are those kids who are afraid to speak up and say, yeah, I watched San Santiago. I watched that 6-hour film. I watched Come and See. Maybe I haven't seen The Wolf of Wall Street or like whatever film bro A24 film is. I love how I'm keep pushing this narrative like I hate it. Well, I was gonna say I love pushing this narrative that I just hate these things, and I like to think this is a if like I was a bridge to like better podcasts, I'm happy with that. Like if you like Hibachi Justice, Michael Scott and the Unscott, or excuse me, Atkins Undisputed, almost giving Matt Bledsoe too much credit there. If you want to get into high art podcasting like that, you want to like go on Cobwebs, this is your gateway podcast to like, I'm like the Jeremy Johns and Flick Pick of YouTube for podcasting. Like Chris Stockman is the echelon there, but you got to get through me first to like understand what that group of people are doing, and I'm comfortable doing that, but I got to humble some of my listeners and be like, hey, this is as low as it gets. Like, be happier here,
You fill a vital role for sure.
Well, I mean, I don't know how I pull great guests like you and Lindsay, and I know we're all friends. We're on this inner circle, like this. We're like in a secret society of podcasting. But I'm very much always contemplating how did they decide to bring me on here and tolerate it. As a matter of fact, I think Matt Bledsoe, he only is on there and tolerates me because I make him laugh, and I'm glad to do that for him.
Hey, that's a good reason. I think that's reason enough.
Yeah, shout out Matt Bledsoe though, real quick. Boy's really cute. He's kind of busy for me, but you know what? I'm still waiting around for him. I'm like that girl that like isn't in love with like the popular kid in school, but like is too afraid to like ask him out, or like when he's around me, I flirt around with him. That's me and Matt Bledsoe right there. When he's talking, I'm like, oh my God, there he is. It's like, notice me, say hi. I'm sure you're loving this like bromance conversation right now.
Dear Diary.
But let's talk about Dear Diaries. You've been busy. I'm sure you've been jotting down how many guest appearances you have a month right now, right?
Oh my goodness. It comes in waves. I'm always happy to talk movies with my podcasting friends. So yeah, I was recently on the Cult Movies podcast.
Loved that episode. Yeah.
Recently had an episode of Film Feast with Matt. Recently recorded with Lindsay for Schlock and Awe, but that hasn't released yet. So there's always something. If you follow me on Twitter, I always post when there's something happening. But I've just been watching a lot of movies, just been hanging out. It's summer. I hate it. So
it's really hot where you're at. I could only imagine.
So I'm just like hanging out in my little cave, my little dark lair.
You're like the Gnome King. You're like inside.
I'm kind of like the Gnome King a little bit. Yeah. I like my creature comforts indoors where I am in control of my environment and I'm not in direct sunlight.
Oh, kind of emo right there. I kind of like that.
Kind of. When I was in high school, my mom used to call me a vampire. I do everything in the dark to this day.
I feel like it started.
Just live in mood lighting.
I feel like it was like it started with being called a vampire, and then it became you were emo, and then after the emo, and then it became goth, and then it became now you're hipster. I feel like there's a natural progression of this whole subspecies.
I mean, everyone's trying to put everybody in a box. I'm just
Oh, I very much do too. I'm in my own box. I only watch sequel movies, and like that's it. And Daniel only watches 1930s and 40s films. Michael Scott only watches Scott Adkins movies exclusively. Like I got these people all in boxes. No one can change for me. That's what you are. I said it here first.
See, this is why it's so fun being a guest rather than running your own podcast, because I get to sample.
And you look better. You look better than like hosts like me who are always tired and stressed out. You get to like, I just get to
do any editing.
Yeah, I just get to hop on and talk about a movie I like,
Yeah, I do the fun part.
You don't have to be the guy who's always like, "Hi, you're listening to Inside the Sequel," and just like always saying it all the time, You
guys are good at keeping it interesting.
Well, man, I don't know about everyone else, but we sure do try here. we try to get at least over 5 listeners each episode.
There you go.
Yeah, keep the bar low.
I mean, this one, the movie we're talking about on this episode, like this might bring some people out. People who are just like, I want someone to explain to me why this movie was made.
This is quite a turnaround episode for you, honestly, because last time you were on Alien 3, and we were like, I think that got a good conversation going online. I'm not going to cap that. I think on God, like there was a lot of conversations leading up to Alien 3. And then when after that episode came up, a lot of people were like, low key Alien 3 is kind of great. And I'm like, where were you before the episode dropped? Okay. Maybe trendsetting here.
Whenever they arrive, they are welcome. Always welcome to have more people give Alien 3 love.
Yeah, for some reason, people think it's cool to think Alien 3 is not that good. I don't know what it is. I can't figure it out, Matt.
And I think we made a solid case the last time I was on.
I totally watched Alien 3 after we recorded that. I'm not going to lie. I think I told you that.
That's what I love to hear.
It's a low-key rewatchable Alien movie, but you really outdid yourself, though. You've been on things like the Dana Buckler Show. You've been on Schlock and Awe. You've been on Cobwebs. And now you are back in the lowest circle of hell of Inside the Sequel here, where we're talking about the return to Oz. And this was a movie I had been wanting to watch for a long ass time.
This was your first time.
This was my first time. I was a little shy, a little nervous, but I figured it was the right thing to do and talk about on this podcast. And,
it was time. It was about time.
Yeah. And let me just say, this movie, oh God, I thought I had an idea what this movie would be like. In like watching the movie, I didn't know shit after watching it. The credits rolled. I'm like, wow. Like, what
just happened?
What's crazy? I was with Daniel, because believe it or not, internet and people are listening, Daniel and I are like best buddies. We're pretty damn close. And we were talking about, because we're film losers, we were talking about The Wizard of Oz and like the whole backstory behind production on that film. Victor Fleming obviously directed that film, and Judy Garland, and it's such a sad story. And it's like one of those urban legend production stories, Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking, how fitting is this sequel for that kind of reputation of a movie, But people, I think everyone, I don't know how you have never seen Wizard of Oz, but if you haven't seen Wizard of Oz, obviously that's like, it's a monumental film. It's a musical, Judy Garland, the Munchkins, the Wicked Witch, the West. It's just iconic, right?
It is. I was curious prepping to talk to you today about Return to Oz. I started thinking, like, I just assume that everyone has seen Wizard of Oz. And then it occurred to me, like, I don't actually know if kids today still watch it. So I did a totally unscientific poll, and I was texting with my sister and with my best friend, who's like a sister, because they're both mothers of kids that range in ages. Mm-hmm. And the youngest didn't last 5 minutes. She was bored.
Oh my goodness.
But some of the other kids liked it. One said it was okay, and the other said it was good. But it sounded like it hadn't had as much impact on them as it did on us growing up. because we would watch Wizard of Oz like once a year at least.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You know, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I'm not the most well-versed person to talk about musicals, but that was my first musical I ever watched. And that movie was like my first musical. And I feel like that was a lot of people's first musical. And it kind of introduced me to like a movie can have talking scenes and dance and musical numbers. And I feel like like I said, I'm not the most educated person to talk about musicals, but that genre has changed so much in like the last 10 years, even. Like you think about La La Land when it came out, you think of the zombie musical that came out recently, I forget. And even like Into the Heights, like musicals like that, they progress the story. It's kind of, even though musicals, people don't break into sing and dance, but like it feels like that's what would happen in that moment in like a real world setting. And like these Wizard of Oz sequels and early sequels like that, they're kind of like their own set pieces, set like everyone, even the characters know this is a musical number, And I wonder if kids today, when watching musicals, just can't relate to that kind of separation between reality and time.
Could be.
Because I find myself sometimes thinking this is a really cool musical number that totally also fits the progression of like these actual humans interactions, watching Sebastian and Mia dance on Sunset Boulevard feels like how they would actually be on a real date after the party, versus a singing and dance about following the yellow brick road,
And the style of song too is different.
Yes. And I don't, it's kind of crazy because like this Return to Oz is a crazy departure to like the Wizard of Oz story, but the Wizard of Oz story itself is also a very crazy story for kids.
Oh yeah. Have you ever read The Wizard of Oz?
I have not, believe it or not. Well, actually, I don't think people think I'm a reader.
I have read The Wizard of Oz, but there's like a whole series of books. And so that first book is the only one I've read. But there's a bunch of Oz books, and Return to Oz is loosely based on 2 of the sequel books. And the intention for Return to Oz was more for it to be more faithful to the books than a direct beat for beat sequel to the Wizard of Oz movie.
Yeah, I kind of figured that because the director Walter Murch, who's his only directorial film, like he only directed this movie, but he was the editor and I believe
he worked in sound department.
Yeah, which is weird that he would do things like that and then go straight to directing after. And he was an Oscar nominee and winner for movies like Apocalypse Now, Godfather Part 2. There was another, I think it was a Spielberg film.
He worked on The Conversation.
That's Coppola. Yes, correct. And
I think
he was buddies with them.
1138 too.
Okay, so that's the actual title of the movie. I'm not familiar with the movie, but it sounds awesome as hell. Man, George Lucas is a weird guy for me. I mean,
yeah, he is.
American Graffiti to whatever the hell this movie is, to Star Wars, to Indiana Jones, but it's not. I always think Indiana Jones is Lucas, but I also think it's really Spielberg's movie as well.
Yes. Yeah, they collaborated.
It's his from the. I think people call them like the first like boys club of movies or something. They have like a nickname I know where it's
all those guys came up together.
You don't really see that anymore. Yeah.
And they all kind of helped each other out. They'd come up with production companies and yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And you read things about, I feel like if one of them was directing a movie, at least 2 of them were on set for that movie. It's weird.
Right.
You don't hear about that ever, but at that time.
What's funny about Return to Oz is that Murch got fired.
Yeah, I read
pretty
about
early
that.
on. And then he got some of his director buddies to go to bat for him to get him reinstated.
That's insane.
So it paid off. Having those friendships paid off.
That goes to show, like, no matter what your job is at a film, if you do it good, like those people will stand up for you. You know, he must have done a hell of a job editing those movies for Coppola and Lucas and Spielberg to have them back on the set to back them up for a job. Also, pre-production for this movie, from reading about it, sounded like freaking hell.
Like a nightmare.
Yeah, like he gets fired how early into production? Like a couple months in?
I forget. Yeah, it was pretty early. Like, I guess Disney wasn't happy with the dailies they were getting.
Yeah, what are dailies? I'm assuming like just reports.
The reel of the film that they've shot for the day, the scenes that have been shot. Yeah, this is the story of how this movie got made is so funny. It's like, I mean, it's already this daunting thing, right? How do you make a sequel, even if your intention is to make it more like the books than the 1939 movie? I mean, that's pretty daunting. 46 years later, you go to make a sequel.
Yeah.
And for this iconic film with these performers, you know, someone like Judy Garland, like how do you top Judy Garland? Like, this is like really daunting. This was a hell of a project to even attempt. So it's kind of funny that they tried to do it in the first place, but they did. And, you know, had all of these issues in production. And then it's my understanding that Disney kind of wrote this one off.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't going to make any money. So they didn't try very hard to promote it.
Imagine working on that and knowing that the people who are funding you don't even think it's going to make. Yeah.
That they're just writing it off as a loss and they just can't be bothered.
Yeah. They didn't even have the right, which I think is weird for this sequel. They didn't even have the rights from MGM for this movie. I read they were paying royalties.
Here's the thing. They didn't have to pay royalties on everything, and they didn't have to get permission either. So all of the books, like all of the subsequent books in the Oz series were like public domain.
Oh, whoa, man, that's crazy.
And I think Disney had bought the rights to certain aspects.
Of course,
parts of the property,
of course,
but it was going to expire soon, so they needed to move on it because the rights were going to expire. The one thing they did have to pay MGM for was the use of ruby slippers, because ruby slippers are not part of the original book. Ruby slippers were a plot device that was added for the Wizard of Oz that was not part of the books. And so because that was this original idea that MGM had come up with, they did have to pay for the use of the ruby slippers.
Good. Disney should have to pay for the things they're taking. That's good.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about milking Disney of money. I don't like Disney just getting to own everything. I like them.
I hear you. Every month I agonize over whether or not to cancel the Disney Plus subscription.
I think I'm part of the club who's like, it's cool to like not like Disney, but like I also like binge watch The Mandalorian.
Like, patronize Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's kind of like whatever, like they're huge and that's just the way it is. I just like when I think about pruning some of my monthly subscriptions and I'm like, I don't watch Disney Plus that much, but I always come up with an excuse not to cancel it. This month it was, hey, we're going to talk about Return to Oz. I'm going to rewatch it. So, hey, hang on to it for another month.
From someone who loved The Wizard of Oz as a kid, I was blown away that Return to Oz was a Disney movie. Like, I actually did not know that until I was like looking up where I can stream this movie. When I saw it was on Disney Plus, I was like, there's no way. There's just no fucking way that this is on Disney.
No, here it is.
Man, this movie is so creepy, but it fits like it came out of the 80s, but like it feels like those early Disney movies that have like the subject matter that feels like it shouldn't be in a Disney movie. And it's odd. Like early Disney live action movies before you even hit the 2000s, they feel weird. You know, I can't put it into words, but early Disney live action movies, they never sat well with me.
I mean, that's what I grew up on. So
that's
like
it
feels like it's like coming home, you know.
Oh,
I get you.
Disney's always felt kind of dark at times for me. Like as a kid, even I realized like, oh, this is like the rat and the Lady and the Tramp. I love Lady and the Tramp, but like the rat scene, I'm like, this is a fucking rat that's about to like kill this baby, and they knock over a carriage, and it's like, oh, they just killed it. Yeah, Dumbo. As an adult watching
is
Dumbo,
traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched Dumbo in easily 30 years.
That opening song to Dumbo
I'm
is creepy. Yeah. It's like they got away with some stuff.
They did. And I mean, I don't, I'm not a parent, so I'm sure it's probably better that the stories have been, that they're kind of softer around the edges these days and a little lighter fare. That's probably for the best.
It's boring and we can complain, but yeah.
I can't help but love these kind of dark, twisted family movies.
I agree.
And this is definitely one of them.
I watched this movie to start. So I took a night and a day to watch it. I watched this movie at like 11 p.m. to start. Shows you my schedule. And there was a part in the movie at night where I was like, wait, what the hell am I watching? This is insane. This is kind of creepy. It's like, wait, what's going on?
It is.
So this movie, it's funny. Judy Garland was 16 when I think she was like 16 or 17 when she made Wizard of Oz.
She was.
And she looked older for her age, which I think people at that time looked a lot older than they really were. And in this movie, Dorothy is a new, I forget the actress's name.
Fariuza Balk.
You see, this is why we have Carmelita on this show, because she brings the actual knowledge of movies into this. She looks like she's 9 or 10 in this movie.
She is 10 years old.
Okay, there you go. She looks so young, and this is a movie that takes place after the original, which shout out to Walter Murch for that casting choice. And it takes,
well, the Dorothy character in the books is a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So the casting of Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, like she was a little old if you were trying to be faithful to the source material. But I mean, it's Judy Garland. They needed those pipes.
Right.
And her ability to act. So, poor Judy, they were like taping her chest to try to make her look more flat chested, less developed. They were styling her to try to make her look younger. But yeah, she was a 16-year-old girl.
Just the stories of Judy in that movie. It just makes me so sad. It's just,
oh yeah. It was grueling.
Yeah.
So it is funny. Like for folks who grew up with The Wizard of Oz, and that's your idea of Dorothy Gale, to then have Dorothy Gale be 10 years old, like obviously a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a little jarring for people.
I think that's what makes this movie work a little bit more, to be creepy though. If it was an older, I don't know if I would have believed the type of antics that were in this movie, but as a kid,
right.
I kind of was starting to think of it as like in the lens of a young kid. This movie, so Dorothy comes back, I guess, through almost like a shock therapy session in a way, because she's having these nightmares from Oz, if I remember correctly. She goes to the doctor. They strap her up to like analyze her dreams, very much like Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street is what I kept thinking. To like, figure out what's wrong with her trauma. And then she teleports herself back to Oz. It's not like a tornado like the original movie. She kind of just goes into her own imagination in a weird way. And she sees like, I think she sees like doubles of herself, right?
So another little girl at the clinic helps her escape because this is new technology. They're going to use electroshock therapy on her. But apparently there's there's patients who have been damaged, who have been injured, locked in the basement. So the little blonde girl, who at that point is nameless, helps Dorothy to escape the clinic where they're doing these like not safe experimental treatments. And she goes into the water of the river. And yeah, and then once she's in the water, that's where she, she floats
into the land of
that's
Oz.
her gateway back into Oz.
And she finds a chicken that talks there, which is a new character.
There's a lot of new characters,
which I think is a smart idea for this movie.
Yes.
I got to give Walter Murch that credit. This movie has new characters, and when she floats back to Oz, well, first thing I noticed, besides the talking chicken, is the rock with faces.
Yes.
And it's so subtle until they do a scene where it's talking to an unseen creature or voice. And it's just eavesdropping. It's so creepy right off the bat, this rock with facial expressions.
Yeah, and the faces like appear and then disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Like the rock will go smooth again.
It's really great claymation, I believe, is what the animation style it's for.
They did, yeah.
But as soon as, for anybody who's watched the original Wizard of Oz and then watched Return of Oz, it's weird, but it's a vibe you remember but can't put your finger on. And I was like that, but I kept digging into the deep trenches of my childhood of like where I've seen this before. So Dorothy comes back to Oz, and obviously she saved the land of Oz in the first movie, and now it looks completely different. I kept thinking of like the Chronicles of Narnia, like Prince Caspian,
Sure.
the Never-Ending Story, Black Cauldron, and like Stardust. These type of kids movies that also share a similarity of being dark, but like the story of like these child characters coming into for the first time, or like returning to these fantasy worlds from previous stories or movies. And I kind of like that. I like that in a lot of these early movies where like I remember, especially like those early Chronicles of Narnia movies before Disney did them, where they were kind of creepy in their animation style.
No, totally. It's I think one of the differences with Return to Oz that's real obvious out the gate is that the Wizard of Oz, it's like everything's on a studio lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they were gorgeously constructed sets, but it's very clear that like these were constructed sets. What's interesting about Return to Oz is that they did do some filming in a studio in England, but they also filmed outdoors on location on these like different farms and in these plains in England. So you have like actual trees and like you're like in these wooded areas and there's like dirt on the ground and it's kind of just the colors of nature. It does look a little grittier and it lends it to that like kind of just a darker feeling to it because it's a fantasy world, but there's a lot of times in Return to Oz where this fantasy world looks a lot like our world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just creepy for a kid's story to be like the world they left to go back into their own world is like better now. But when they come back, it's fallen up completely.
Up.
Mm-hmm.
It is like a bomb went off in Oz.
Okay, was it just me or was I just the only one that was mad that like she sees the yellow brick road like all destroyed and stuff and she follows it and she gets to Emerald City so quickly, where in the first movie it's like that, she's like in the first movie she's just like taking her time to get to the Emerald City.
Long time.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the pace of this one, like the journeys are a lot quicker.
Yeah, this movie's not a journey.
There's a lot that has to be accomplished in this movie.
This isn't a movie that's a journey. This is a conflicting movie. This is a movie all about conflict, which blows my mind for a Disney movie.
Yeah. What did you think about the Emerald City?
So it
when
looks
she
a lot
first
different.
arrived?
It looks a lot different than when you thought about it in the first movie. In the second movie, it
Oh,
looks like the
sure.
fall of Rome, and I was crying. I was like Caesar sitting on a rock crying because there was no more worlds to be conquered. It's because Rome is fallen. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't
And
even look like
all
a
these,
future city. Like Emerald City is supposed to be this future advanced city, and it doesn't look anything like that in this movie.
No, it looks like a war zone.
Mm-hmm. But more
It's effective though.
it is, and it's for a 10-year-old girl, like a girl that looks so young, to see these people in stone, and then the circle of like headless women. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
wait a minute, this
Wait,
is
what's
implying way
happening?
too much. Like I thought the rocks were already kind of questionable in this movie, and I see the headless women, and then you see Tin Man, and then I'm like, oh my god! I kept thinking they ran out of money, or the costume designer for this movie just wanted to do something completely different, because Tin Man in The Lion looks so different compared to the original movie.
Oh yeah, Scarecrow too. When we finally
Oh.
see him again, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if maybe they styled those characters from the first story that they brought back, if they styled them differently because they wanted them to look like the illustrations from the books,
Oh yeah.
or what. Because that would be a valid reason to make them look different, but it's weird. They look
Yeah. And in the grand scheme, they did look weird and kind of creepy.
weird. Yeah.
In the grand scheme of the story, it does feel like it was like meant to be like cameos, and like,
Right.
the Cowardly Lion. It's easier to represent it as an actual lion than versus the guy in the costume in the first movie. That makes sense.
Right. Tell me how you feel about the Wheelers. I'm always curious how an adult first time viewer
That
takes in the Wheelers, how you would feel about the Wheelers. Because when we were kids, it's so funny. Shout out to my baby sister, Boo. This was one of the movies when she was little that she wanted to watch all the time. So we would watch it all the time. And so, I'm older than her, but I was still a kid, and I can remember like the Wheelers, like just being like totally creeped out. Like they're like so skeevy.
they're sus. They are sus material. Like when I saw them with their faces, like their masks above their head,
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. I was like, there's no way. There's no fucking way that they're gonna have this in the movie the whole time.
They do.
And the masks are creepy. I was watching this at midnight and I was like, wait a minute. I was like, no way. What is that posture? Like, how are they skating like that? It's just so
The posture is creepy. That nails on the chalkboard sound, like the squeaky wheel sounds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got like, sounds weird. I got like Clockwork Orange Druid vibes with them, and I didn't like that in my Return to Oz. Like when I thought this movie was really dark when they cornered Dorothy and they're laughing, and I was like, oh my god, no way. I was thinking this is Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. This is creepy stuff. I don't want to think what's gonna happen. And then she escapes, and like even then I'm kind of weirded out. Like the shout out 2021 for pushing TikTok, the app. It must have, whoever created TikTok must have loved Return to Oz, because the freaking character in this movie's name is TikTok.
Friend, when the TikTok app, when I started hearing about that, the first thing I thought of was Return to Oz. TikTok, the Royal Army of Oz. Like that's like, so anytime someone says TikTok, like that's always, I see his little face. I see his little robotic mustache and his little his little helmet.
He really is like the backbone of this movie, though.
I love him. I love how much he loves not being alive.
He's so emo. He's really emo.
And he loves to tell anyone who will hear about it that he's really proud of the fact that he is not alive.
He's the part of the movie. He's the part of the movie where I'm like, this is not like anything like the original movie. Cause like he's like ready to like beat up the Wheelers. He's all about explaining the movies like exposition and plot and everything that's gone wrong. And he's also the muscle of the movie. You didn't get any of that in the original. And he leads, I forget how he leads Dorothy into the witch's castle. Well, she is a witch, but technically no. I'm always confused.
Right. So she's Princess Mombi, but she does some magics. Witch, sorceress, whatever. But I think her proper title is princess. But she's just an evil bitch. Let's just put it out there. She's evil.
I can't believe they put in a kids movie a hall of headless women for this headless body.
Good. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. Now that you've seen it, your life is changed.
I just can't believe someone in the 80s was like, kids need to know, like decapitation's a thing,
Room looks because there's mirrors and glass and it's just all mirrors and gold everywhere. And then you go into the headroom and it's a beautiful room and this beautiful cabinetry with, again, it's all gilded and golden and there's mirrors and there's glass and it's beautiful. And there's all of these attractive heads. And when you discover that she just switches her head out and puts on a different one depending on her mood, like that's pretty gnarly. It's also pretty gnarly that it is her intention to lock Dorothy in a tower so that she can grow. And when she is mature enough, Mombi wants to take her head.
I did think that was really creepy. That dialogue there.
It's so creepy. I love it.
And she actually does lock. I didn't think like, oh, Dorothy's going to escape. She actually does lock her up there.
She does. Yeah.
And
now wait a second. When you finally saw Mombi's original head, did you recognize her as the nurse from the clinic?
Yes. Of course.
That is one thing that this film does that is like the original Wizard of Oz, that you have people from Kansas who she then sees as a different character in Oz. And they do that here too. And Mombi is one of the first ones.
Which is funny. The only negative character in the original Wizard of Oz was the Wicked Witch of the West for her neighbor,
right,
who wants to take Toto. And everyone else is good that she recognizes from the world. In this movie, all the bad people are all people she recognizes. And there's no good people from her real life. It's the opposite. It's dark.
It's the opposite. Yeah, it is dark. Mombi, the whole Mombi thing is dark. And once you've seen it, it sticks with you. Like, it's very memorable.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe they were like totally ahead. Like, and then the scene where it shows her headless, reaching for a head. I'm like, oh my God, as a kid watching, like this was at late at night and I'm watching this movie and I'm like, no way I'm actually watching this. This isn't no fucking way they thought this was a good idea.
No, this is real. That's the real movie.
But even creepier than that was Jack Pumpkinhead, who's the new Scarecrow in my mind. But what's creepier, Jack Pumpkinhead or the fact that he wants to call Dorothy his mom?
What is this? A man or a melon?
A pumpkin, if you please. My name's Jack. Jack Pumpkinhead.
May I call you Mom, even if it isn't so?
Be careful, Jack.
I'm sorry, Mom.
It's all right, Jack.
Like that opens up a whole nother conversation of like kinks, like I can't wait till I meet a girl. I'm like, hey, can I call you Mom? Like, please.
It's a little weird.
It's
a little weird. But Jack is so innocent. Jack Pumpkinhead is so innocent.
You see, of course.
He is. He's very innocent. I mean, he's only been alive. I mean, not very long. So, he doesn't know any better.
Yeah, I will give him that. But like, also I kept thinking, I was like, yeah, how many girls have I asked? Can I call you Mom, please? Like, take care of me. I don't know what to do. He has a sad, like helpless voice,
He does.
I think also think I read that for Tim Burton, this was the movie that influenced his Jack Skellington character. And
Correct.
I could not shake that image with the pumpkin.
Right.
They look so similar, like from
Yeah.
the teeth drawing on the pumpkin carving.
No, totally.
I love Jack Pumpkinhead. He is a nice part of this movie, even though he looks terrifying as hell. He's such a good scene.
Oh yeah, no, he's totally kind of creepy looking,
Mhm.
but it's such a sweet character, and he provides some comic relief. I also the Gump.
The headless moose.
So it's a Gump, which is some kind of animal in the land of Oz, which looks a lot like a moose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like one of those trophy heads, and they strap it to some sofas and create this like flying creature, and they bring it to life. And like I love the Gump's Eeyore vibes.
Yes.
Like right from the gate, he's like, I don't think I'm gonna hold it together for very long. Like they bring him to life, and he's immediately like I don't think I've got much time in this world.
Him and TikTok, they're like, the vibe's
I
off
love
with us
it.
being alive right now.
I just love their energy. This just very like
That was the part of the movie where I got like Alice in Wonderland vibes, like the Queen of
Right.
Hearts, Off with Your Heads.
yeah.
And I think even through like the Looking Glass story, if I remember my literature classes in high school, like the Queen wanting to like make everyone headless, but they live. This movie kind of feels like that in a weird way. And
Yeah,
it also feels
it's
like the
got some
never
of
ending
the same
story.
vibes.
It also feels like the never ending story. Like Dorothy's writing on this magical beast, it feels like a reanimator beast, of course, because it's made up of different freaking creatures. And then she winds up in outer space looking down at the Wheelers trying to chase her down. Yeah, this movie would be perfect for an edible, is what I kept thinking. I was like, this is
yeah.
I was like, this is a movie that's gonna be great for this, because like I mean, you get from a castle with headless people, now you're in outer space in the sky with a headless moose type character and a pumpkin talking.
Right. And people turning into sand down below.
Mm-hmm. And it's weird when Jack Pumpkinhead, where he's like, "Oh, it's okay, Mom, you can go to sleep." I'm like, "Huh?" I was like, I did not hear that in this movie. I did not hear that.
No, you really did.
And then they land on like a mountaintop.
Correct.
And then you find out who the rock face was, which I thought was the coolest but creepiest parts of the movie. Was the you didn't know who the rock character was, because it was always looking really sinister, but also really shocked at the same time. It was really great claymation. I got to give this movie credit for that. And you find out that it's actually a king and his subjects, the Gnome King. He's part of this mountaintop, and he's been the one who's orchestrated all this evil doing, basically, because he has the ruby slippers that we find out. That I think it's weird that he found the ruby slippers basically that just fell into his lap. I think that's kind of weird. He also looks incredibly creepy. He's like smoking a joint.
He's totally creepy.
He's got a beard.
And this is really fun. So the actor that plays Dr. Worley, the doctor in the evil electroshock clinic, and who plays the Gnome King, is Nicol Williams. And Nicol Williamson. Nicol Williamson played Merlin in Excalibur.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
You must. Because Nicol Williamson is such a great actor. He gives these really memorable performances, and his performance as Merlin in Excalibur steals the whole movie. Like, who cares about Arthur? Forget Arthur. I just want to follow Merlin around in that movie, because Nicol Williamson, his portrayal of Merlin is just so memorable. And here too, as the Gnome King, It's like, he isn't, they do like the claymation, and then also like they, and it kind of looks like him, but it's mainly just his voice, but the inflection of his voice and just his line delivery is so perfect, where he's saying all of these things to Dorothy and her companions that sounds innocent or innocuous or like non-threatening, but everything is a threat. And he's playing nice, but he has every intention of killing them all.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because at one point I thought he was going to be friends with them. I thought it was just like a surprise. The creepy person's a good person.
Nope.
But he's totally he's like the Thanos of this story. He's been behind the scenes. He's been moving in silence, trying to like orchestrate this whole, like, I don't know, like what's his reasoning for destroying the Emerald City and controlling Oz, but like.
So what he tells Dorothy is that he was just reclaiming the emeralds that the citizens of Oz had stolen from him, because the gems come from the ground and the stone. And he, as the Gnome King, made of stone.
Of course.
That's what he says. But really, I mean, I think he just wants to be in power.
I mean, he really rocks the ruby slippers pretty nice,
He
though.
really does.
Like, he flaunts those. He's like, stepping out, ladies, look out,
And I think one of the greatest things is that he proposes this game.
Yeah.
As a way for them to get the Scarecrow back, because that's what Dorothy wants. The Scarecrow was going to be the ruler of Oz when the wizard left at the end of The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
So she's just like, I just want to get my friend back. And the Gnome King has this game that sounds like fun at first, like a guessing game. But he doesn't reveal at first the real stakes of the game. So I think it's really cool, like the first time you watch this and then you realize what the game is really about and like how high the stakes are. Like, it's pretty stressful.
Yeah.
That first time.
This is the part of the movie I kept thinking, it reminds me of The Gate, like the second half of The Gate, like the third act, like where those little goblins are running around because the Wheelers come and Moby comes back and like you get this insanely huge creature because the Gnome King becomes like, he thinks he's got this game under control, and it's heartbreaking that Dorothy's losing her friends eventually. Each guess she loses a friend. And TikTok is like the first to go, and I think Jack Pumpkinhead is the second.
Jack goes first.
Oh, okay.
TikTok, because TikTok is the brains of the operation. TikTok pretends to wind down so that they'll send Dorothy in there to wind him back up.
Oh.
Because he wants to give Dorothy a chance to see what happens when you guess incorrectly. And like what you get turned into.
An ornament. It's weird. It's
an ornament, right.
Did you see the Augustus statue there? That's when I was like, wait, what the hell? Like, there's a Roman statue amongst all this. I knew this movie.
It's like a room full of knickknacks.
Yep.
And like antiques and things.
You can't lie.
It's pretty cool.
You were terrified when she finds the emerald and it's the Scarecrow, and he looked completely different than any of us could have ever imagined what the Scarecrow would ever look like in this movie.
He looks like a walking nightmare.
He's scary but derpy at the same time.
Yes.
It is.
No, that's exactly what the Scarecrow looks like in this movie. Scary but derpy.
Yeah.
100%.
Like, I don't know. Like, I think I've seen that kind of face at night downtown in an alleyway, and I try to forget it. I'm not quite sure. It's freaking terrifying.
terrifying. Okay, what's scarier, Princess Mombi or the Scarecrow's
The
face?
Scarecrow. I can't believe they thought that was that was an acceptable design for like a core character from the first movie. I
Right.
feel like,
and for a children's movie,
because it's like an animatronic type of. I kept thinking of like the prosthetics of that character design.
I don't know.
Because
but it's frightening.
Because like in the first movie, it's obviously a guy in makeup wearing a costume, and it looks good, you know, like for its time, it looks great. Even then, it looks good. But in this movie, I mean, it looks like something off like, I don't know, like Lazy Town or some fucking kids 2000s cartoon show that I luckily didn't have to watch as a kid. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's really bizarre because the mask, it's like the face doesn't move.
No. It's weird. And he's like trying to be close to Dorothy. And I'm like, get the fuck away. Like, you're so scary. Like, even Jack Pumpkinhead looks more harmless than you.
Right. I know.
Okay, but we got to talk about how the Gnome King is ousted. The poison.
It's so good.
The MVP of the movie, low key, has always been this chicken for me, because it's
Belina.
Belina's always talking, always sarcastic, these puns, yada yada. Her time's to shine in this movie with the Gnome King. And I could not believe Disney, Walt Disney, I don't know who's president at this time, probably fired because it wasn't Michael Eisner at the time, was like, the Gnome King, fuck him. He hates protein. He can't have an egg. Kids, eggs are not a central part of a nutritious breakfast because they're poisonous as fuck. This movie has the Gnome King die because she hatches an egg and drops it in his mouth before he eats the Jack Pumpkinhead. Oh my God. What?
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is, I love that the chicken thing pays off, because from the moment Dorothy lands in Oz with Belina, the little stone henchmen say to who we don't know at that time is the Gnome King, she has a chicken with her. And all throughout the movie, people keep mentioning the chicken, but they don't mention why they give two shits about a chicken. But they do consistently. Every one of these, the Gnome King's henchmen or, you know, people that work for him, everyone mentions the chicken. And they all seem like worried about it or scared, and you don't know why. Like, what's the big deal about a chicken? And then it all pays off. It all pays off.
Yeah.
When you think all is lost, this dude just ate the Gump sofa. So now he's just like a trophy head, a living trophy head. He's gonna eat Jack Pumpkinhead. And you know that after that, of course, like, it's over. Dorothy's the next to go. And then Belina comes through, lays that egg, and saves her friends.
This was the part of the movie where I was like, this vodka tonic's not doing enough. Let me just add a little bit more, you know? I was like, let me see how they wrap this baby up. And when, you know, the movie's almost 2 hours long. We got to talk about that. It's almost 2 hours long. And I'm like, a kid watching an Oz movie is not going to watch a 2-hour movie.
You know, some might not. That's fine.
But you know what? The ending, it wraps up pretty good. She wishes for everyone to come back, and she wears the ruby slippers, of course. And you see Emerald City. It looks a lot different. You see some munchkins. You get the cameo with the Tin Man and the lion. But then you realize that the blonde girl was actually the blonde little girl was Jack Pumpkinhead's mom, who he kept referencing the whole movie, who was actually like the actual Queen of Oz, I believe.
Yes, Ozma.
Which Man, shout out the writers for this one. Like they really bring everything back. Like they turn it all around. Like there's no stone left unturned this whole movie.
This is true.
I gotta give credit
of course,
for that.
like the Ozma name doesn't mean much if you haven't read the books.
That's what I figured because they kept mentioning Ozma, and I was like, I don't recognize that name at all.
Who the hell's that?
Mm-hmm.
And when you kind of see, because earlier in the movie, when Dorothy is in the clutches of Princess Mombi, you see like a figure in the glass, but it's blurry. It's kind of ghost-like, phantom-like. You can't really see the features,
Right?
To know who it is.
I thought it was not the Wicked, but I thought it was the Good Witch of the East from the first movie. Glinda. That's who I thought it was at first. So I was pleasantly surprised it was a new character at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of, the Ozma thing is cool. I wish there, like, some of that exposition about who the hell Ozma is had come in earlier.
Whose man's is this?
But I mean, it's fine. And her little costume is super cool.
I took it as that's Dorothy if Dorothy could stay in Oz. But Dorothy obviously can't,
Right.
That's how I took it. And I was, despite this nightmare fuel of a movie, I was happy to see TikTok come back because I was afraid he was gone forever. But yeah, so she comes back to Kansas, and were you creeped out when she shows up in a forest by herself and her family finds her, and then she sees a buggy with a jail cell behind it, and it's Mombi in this random fucking forest? Which does Kansas, the state, have that? I have actually never been in Kansas. Is that, you guys have trees there?
I mean, they filmed this in the UK.
Oh.
I'm guessing there are two places in the world that could not look more different.
Seriously.
Than Kansas.
They also changed the breed of Toto. I was pretty mad about that.
I mean, he's a little terrier. He's not a Cairn terrier. He's like a little like Brussels Griffin terrier, but he's really cute.
He's still there.
Oh, you know what we didn't talk about?
Here we go.
Aunt M.
She looks younger in
Dorothy's
this movie.
Aunt.
Yeah.
It's Piper Laurie, the mom from Carrie.
Oh my gosh. I knew she looked familiar. And when she comes up and says, "It's too nice of a day to be indoors," I was like, that's the nicest thing that actor's ever said in my eye.
But yeah, like that's another one of like the little things about this movie that, like, little kids, like if they've never seen Carrie.
And I'm sure De Palma was like, get this actress in this movie. Yeah.
But if you've seen Carrie and then you see this, like Aunt M is immediately suspicious because I remember Carrie White's mom.
I also remember
Aunt a psycho.
Yeah. And I remember Aunt M in the original Wizard of Oz being like super unsupportive of Dorothy. She wanted Dorothy to like, stop dreaming and be a house hand. And in this movie,
she is here too.
Yeah. You're kind of right, huh? Because she thinks there's something wrong with her for having dreams.
Right. She's not sleeping. She thinks that Dorothy's like making all this up. So she's going to take her to this clinic. And
Dorothy, like Alice, they have a lot of trauma to get through. Yeah.
We're just lucky that she was able to escape before they fried her brain.
Seriously.
I love it.
And then you see Ozma. Yeah, then you see Ozma in the reverse glass, which I thought was like a reference to Alice through the looking glass. Right. And then she goes out and plays, and it's like this sweet but kind of like suspicious kids music playing at the end. Like with the credits rolling, you see her playing, and it's in this really pitiful front yard, and you get this kind of like, outro music, but it kind of feels like weird. Like, I don't know, like it was creepy, and this movie is just creepy. Like you watch this movie, you're like, I'm never showing my kid this until they're a teenager. Well, they'll actually appreciate a lot of the references.
It's so good. Like it has its problems. Definitely. But I think it was ambitious what they tried to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Some real memorable imagery in this movie.
Yeah. Technically, the movie is fascinating. I really applaud the claymation, the costume design. The production sets were really good. Much like the original 39. The productions looked great. You don't get any musical numbers in this movie at all.
You don't, no.
It's true. The girl who plays Dorothy in this movie, I gotta credit. She was a good Dorothy.
You know who she is, right? Fairuza Balk? Oh, my friend. So this was young Fairuza's first film role. She had done some TV movies. This was her first film role. She's Nancy from The Craft.
Oh my God.
She's in The Waterboy. She's the girlfriend in The Waterboy, the Adam Sandler movie.
This poor woman, this poor child.
That's her. Fairuza Balk. That's her.
I don't remember Waterboy. I remember The Craft though.
Yeah.
I can see that. Okay.
It's her.
It's been a minute. When are you going to buy me that Craft Screen Factory, by the way? I'll give you my address. Ship it over here. Slip cover, preferably. Oh, that's so great. This movie really is like it's much like the show. It's like a bridge to like the past into like later things to come that we kind of know about, or some of us know about and forgot about.
I feel like this is like the perfect movie for Inside the Sequel. Because it's such a weird sequel. It's so fascinating. And like, this is a movie that people will say, why the hell would you make a sequel to The Wizard of Oz?
That's like almost 50 years later.
Right. Like, why would you do that? But you know what? I'm glad they did. Because this movie is bonkers. It's fun. It's creepy. It's a good time.
The poster for this movie is even creepy. And they thought nothing to change it. Like they have Jack Pumpkinhead on the fucking poster front and center.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, no kid's going to want to see this. It's going to be too much.
We did. We watched it, my friend.
We were there.
It's a real thing that happened. I'm telling you, my little sister, she wanted to watch it like all the time. You know how kids are, like they like latch onto something and they want to watch it over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
This was that movie for my sister, and so we'd watch it with her.
Yeah, this fits the mold of like those like Ichabod Crane, Headless Horseman animated films, and like some of those like odd creepy like Alice in Wonderland. Like it feels,
you know, me, I always like that spooky shit. That's
it feels like early, if it's like even though it's an 80s movie, it feels like early Disney movies mixed in with like the like weird
the 80s fantasy thing.
Because like Labyrinth, Black Crystal, you know, Never Ending Story.
Right.
It feels like it's trying to be like that. And then I feel like movies like Chronicles of Narnia, the early movies actually came out, not the newer ones that came out in the 2000s, but the early ones. It feels like it was just like that.
Similar vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for it.
I kind of like that. Like I watched Stardust for the first time with Daniel for his birthday party. And I didn't care for Stardust that much, but I know as if I watched it for the first time as a kid, I would have loved that movie because it's creepiness and like oddness, you know. As an adult, it's harder for me to get into. But like
that happens.
Yeah, but like, you know, it's kind of like this movie. I like it. And it was really creepy. Like I could acknowledge this movie's fucking creepy, but as a kid, I probably been like, either give it to me, or I would have been like, holy shit, keep this away from me. You know, like this movie
light on for a week.
Like as a kid watching this, I'd be like, I take Nightmare 2 over this movie any day of the week. Like that's not creepy compared to this. Just like the imagery is so good. Which is sad that, you know, the director almost got fired for his direction in this.
Yeah. Well, and like this was a big box office loser.
Yeah.
The budget was 28 million. The box office was 11.1 million.
How do you pitch this movie? Especially it's a Disney movie and it was before the Renaissance, you know?
Right.
Tough sell.
It is. It is. But I like to think that people, especially now with Disney Plus, here's what I'm hoping will happen. Because anyone, people who saw it, whether they love it, like it, indifferent, don't like it, it's memory. Look like, you know what I mean? Like it's like burned into your psyche once you've seen it. But I'm hoping that now that people have access to things like Disney Plus and streaming, that more people will discover Return to Oz.
I read on
This is
Den
my
of
dream.
I read the few times I read like movie articles online. It's the only reading I ever get. Like Den of Geeks. I don't know what your opinion is on them. I have a weird opinion with Den of Geeks, but they did put a story, an article out like in 2019, 2020, about the Return to Oz. And they were saying there's a growing cult following for this movie. So all I'm saying is, Carmelita, you already did Alien 3, and now you did this movie. Come October, I better see Film Twitter standing you and your opinions on this movie and Alien 3 for their October watching. Alien 3 would be a great October watch.
It would, yeah.
And then put this movie in at like the last week of Halloween with some people getting drunk.
For sure.
Maybe
like,
depending on your state.
A horror movie, but it's kind of a horror movie.
Yeah, this is like a movie I like to put on as like a background. And then somebody looks at the TV and they see Jack's pumpkin head and be like, wait, what the fuck is going on right now? What are you watching? Same thing. Like if I put on Alien 3 at a party and someone turns around like, wait, why is this guy looking at the alien like it's God right now? And why is it kill and like blood's on his face? I'm
going to tell you right now, my favorite thing to come out of this podcast episode is comparing this movie to A Clockwork Orange. That is my favorite. That is the greatest thing that ever happened to this movie. I swear.
I can't be. I feel like I can't be the only one.
You're not wrong though. Like the Droogs, the Wheelers. There's even a very similar.
You could make an argument. The shock therapy is similar to Malcolm McDowell's his eye.
Look.
Yeah. Whole, the impressionability of that is insane. Kubrick's a god. Kubrick's been getting stand on Film Twitter lately. It's only fitting we talk about him on here now, I guess, to hop on that hype.
So that would be an interesting double feature.
Lindsay is
Return to Oz and Clockwork Orange.
Lindsay is like yelling yes right now.
Lindsay, if you're listening, A Clockwork Orange and Return to Oz. Think about it.
Lindsay, get us on your fucking show so we can get drunk and talk about this double feature for God's sakes.
Droogs and Wheelers.
Please. We'll drink screwdrivers for the Clockwork Orange part, even though they drink milk. So guess White Russians. And in this movie, we'll drink cider for Jack Apple Pumpkinhead. My God, that should be the hottest costume of October 2019 is Jack Pumpkinhead. Easy costume, creepy as fuck. Can you imagine? Could you imagine like putting a pumpkin on your head, like actually on your head? And is that possible?
It would be heavy. It would be possible, but it would be heavy. Unless you got like something like a lightweight foam, it wouldn't look as good. But at least it then wouldn't like be so taxing on your neck and your shoulders. I've always wanted to do a Mombi costume.
I could see you pulling that off.
Her dress is very elaborate.
There's
like a lot of like her Mombi's dress has some like very definite Stevie Nicks vibes.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out if it's like socially acceptable to call your girl mom or not because of this movie, because they seem to normalize it.
I love that that's your hang up for this.
It's like, hey mom. It's like I see a girl, I'm like, can you be my mom for like a day? Take care of me, please. That's for my simp listeners. I know I got a few. I'm with you,
my friends. No judgment. No judgment.
Well, with that being known that I have a mommy kink, Carmelita, do you have anything else you want to talk about with Return to Oz? Do you have anything for the listeners on this?
I just love it. I hope that folks will revisit this one. I am so happy that you got to experience it for the first time and that we got to talk about it, because that's one of my favorite things, talking about a movie that I've seen a gazillion times with someone who's watching it for the first time. That's always fun for me. So thank you. Yeah. It's always good to be here on Inside the Sequel, and I'm so stoked that we got to talk about this movie.
Well, we appreciate it. And of course, like I said, this was a movie I've been wanting to watch for a while, and now I have the excuse to finally get to watch it. And it's fitting it was with you. I of course, like, this feels like a Carmelita movie. And
Right? It does.
I'm excited for when you eventually come back on, when you've been on another 3 or 4 great podcasts, and then you'll come back on here doing your civic duty. I appreciate it. It'll be great.
You know that I am always happy to come on Inside the Sequel.
But Carmelita, thank you so much for being on. And for our listeners who, they should already know where to find you, because it's great stuff. If they don't, where can we find you and all your great thoughts and opinions on movies?
The great ones and the bad ones too. I have my moments. So I'm on Twitter, also on Letterboxd, same handle for both, at Carmelita Says.
And I highly recommend her Twitter. It's great. She'll post awesome things. She's always collabing with awesome people. I really recommend, not to like give like personal bias or anything, but that Cult of Movie podcast episode I listened to, and that was a great one. I really enjoyed that one with you and Anthony. So if Anthony's listening, there you go. There's your shout out. But that was a great episode.
Thanks.
So I really recommend people listen to that, and listen to us when we were talking about Alien 3 last month. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, I highly recommend you tune into next week, where we have first-time guest Mark Warner, where we talk about Transformers, God Help Me, Dark Side of the Moon, or Dark of the Moon. Sorry, that's a Pink Floyd album. But we have his ass on here for the first time, and
you guys are gonna have fun.
I'm so scared, and I have a vodka Red Bull ready because I need an upper and a downer for it. But if you enjoy this episode, of course, you can always follow Inside the Sequel on Twitter at Sequelpod. You can follow me at Hertastic_Chris. And don't forget to check out our website, InsideTheSequel.com, where you can listen to our episodes as well. We're on Facebook. We're not on Facebook, are we? We're on Spotify and iTunes, and most other podcasts as well. If you want to hear your episode that you'd like for us to cover at some point, email us at sequelpod@gmail.com. We always like to hear what the fans have to say. But once again, Carmelita, thank you so much for being on. And all I have to say to our listeners is this: if you aren't getting traumatized watching Return to Oz, you really care about cinema. Anyway, we'll see you next time.